Reducing employee turnover due to mistrust of management. A management and leadership class presentation by Learning Team Number 1. Charles David, Elizabeth Crownover, Heather Lucas, and Natalia Alcazar. We hope you enjoy our presentation and learn something new. This is Bob. He is a banker at Bank A. He has worked at Bank A for over 3 years. During his 3-year tenure, he has managed to move from a teller position to a banker position, and he hopes one day to become a manager. Even though he has enjoyed his job, it hasn't been easy. The branch that he works at has a lot of problems with management and has caused a great deal of turnover. Just in the last 3 years alone, 10 people have either quit or have been fired. Resignations have caused employees to endure a great deal of responsibilities and extra work that they don't have time for. However, the issue of high employee turnover is not the only issue, and though management is quick to hire new employees, they fail to hire quality employees because they're just focused on hiring employees to fill the empty spots. This makes it hard for Bob to work with people that don't share the mission and values of the bank. Managers also show favoritism. They allow employees that they consider to be friends to have weekends off, while other employees that have been there longer and/or perform better are stuck working the less preferred shifts. Some managers even take advantage of their title and don't stick to their schedule. For example, they leave early because they feel like they can, even though there's more work to be done. This leaves all the work to bankers like Bob and causes them to stay late. Even though Bob has done a good job with dealing with all the obstacles put in front of him and has been successful, he feels that his work has not been recognized. This is true for him and all his fellow co-workers that he feels have done a great job. Managers are failing to recognize top performers, and even when they do, Bob and his co-workers do not feel that it is genuine. The issue with Bank A is the high employee turnover rate due to distrust in the management, as well as some other ethical issues compounding the situation for Bob and his co-workers. With better management and leadership skills and practices, the situation for Bank A could be improved and turned around into a thriving working environment for everyone. Having high ethical standards in Bank A would be a sound business strategy. Ethical considerations include planning for adequate staffing with competent employees so that the workloads are not unreasonable, leading to a high-stress environment, poor job performance, negativity, and distrust in the management. Additionally, managers need to treat employees with respect and appreciation by removing the favoritism that is shown for some employees but not others. The manager's behavior of simply being impartial and fair to all employees will positively affect the behavior of the employees and have a better outcome for Bank A. Refining Bank A's ethical standards may result in higher employee retention, a positive image in the industry and community, as well as customer loyalty. Key management and leadership solutions include revamping of the recruiting process, as well as the selection and hiring process, an overhaul of the training program, starting with a needs assessment, conducting constructive performance evaluations, along with a revision of the pay grades and giving fair compensation and benefits, and finally, genuine recognition and appreciation for the employees and the work that they do. Recruiting, the process of developing a pool of qualified candidates. It is important to start with attracting the most qualified candidates. Since there is a high turnover rate, it is important to focus on both external and internal recruiting. Some ways to recruit the most qualified candidates include advertisement, employee referrals, walk-ins, outside organizations, employment services, employment agencies, special events, internet job sites, and social media. Also, identify internal passive candidates, people that are not actively seeking a job, that is, that might be receptive to a change in the scope of their duties or a change in their assigned position. Additionally, the recruiter should also reach out to candidates that possess the skills and qualities needed for the job and encourage them to apply. Selection and hiring process should include reviewing application and resumes. After review, conduct a phone interview, an initial assessment, to screen the candidate. Identify through a phone interview if the candidate possesses traits that align with the company's values and needs for the job before setting up an interview. At the interview, conduct a structured interview with standardized interview questions. They're prepared ahead of time so that all the applicants are asked the same job-related questions. Structured interviews include situational, behavioral, background, and job knowledge. This will allow you to compare each interviewee side by side and identify the best answers to each question. Selection tests will show how likely the candidate will succeed or fail in the job. We recommend work sample tests that require the applicant to perform tasks that are actually done on the job, and assessments, which are a series of managerial simulations graded by trained observers that are used to determine applicants' capability for managerial work. Conducting overt integrity tests, like a written test that estimates the job applicant's honesty by directly asking them what they think or feel about theft or punishment of ethical behaviors. Then perform background checks to ensure that there is no conflict with the type of the candidate that is being hired, i.e. criminal history with stealing, identity theft, etc., etc. Make sure that workplace diversity is promoted, and ensure that company recruiter abides by all federal, state, and industry employment laws and regulations. Training. Investing in training increases productivity by an average of 17% and reduces employee turnover. Perform a needs assessment to identify what each employee needs to be trained on. The objective is to practice, learn, and change job behaviors. Training methods to achieve these goals are on-the-job training, role-playing, simulations and games, and vestibule training. Next, create a code of ethics. Include ethical expectations of issues in the past. For example, leaving early before your shift ends, unless approved by upper management, or leaving home sick, treating employees fairly to prevent favoritism, and etc. Conduct ethics training. Make sure that employees are aware of the code of conduct and consequences for violating the code of conduct. Provide and create an anonymous hotline where employees can express their concerns so that they can be investigated without the fear of retaliation. Go over mission statement and company values. Focus on leadership, management, train on management skills when needed, which are technical, human, conceptual, and motivation to manage. The most important skills for a manager to have is human skills, which is the ability to work well with others. Evaluate training on reactions, learning, behavior, and results. Then make changes as necessary. Performance evaluations and compensation. Use the behavior observation scale to evaluate each worker's performance. Share performance feedback with each employee. Focus on the employee's strengths and discuss different ways to be successful while discussing future goals. Use the 360-degree feedback approach, evaluation by manager, subordinates, peers, and the employee themselves. Reevaluate each job and ensure that pay grades are determined for each position. Determine appropriate raises for each level of performance and ensure that the minimum raise aligns with inflation. Review current commission plan for sales employees and ensure that metrics that need to be met meet the company's ethical standards. Reduce turnover by raising salary levels when losing top performing employees, offering enhanced benefits, or improving working conditions through previous steps of hiring and training. Employees are more likely to stay when compensation is directly linked to performance. Recognition. Reward employees on performance and career advancement. Encourage peer recognition. Introduce extrinsic rewards for employees to work towards. And introduce intrinsic rewards so that employees can feel accomplished and have a sense of empowerment. Team consensus. Is the solution viable? Possibly. There is always an opportunity to create change within an organization as long as the lights are on and the customers are still coming in. It's the organization's responsibility to do everything within their power to address any obstacles that are preventing a company from success. Specifically, in this example with Bank A, it would be to reduce turnover as much as possible by retaining the employees that they have today. The expense associated with hiring and training new team members is too costly to ignore. If your employees are unhappy, it'll spread over to your customers as well, especially in customer service industries such as banking. So long as the leadership is responsible and helps drive the changes and are able to recognize that there is a problem in the first place, being an effective communicator and open to doing things differently, change will be possible. The opportunity to initiate change. In this example, Bank A not only needs to look at the recruiting, selection, and hiring process, training, performance evaluations, compensation, and recognition, but also recognize key factors within management that needs to change. This is called change management. Once key items in management and leadership have been identified as needing change and a plan is documented to act upon, then true organizational development is definitely possible. Identify and weed out poor managers. The relationship that the bank's employees have with the main branch managers is pretty important. If there's no relationship established during the employee's tenure, then it would be rather discouraging or surprising to only communicate when there is bad news. As far as employees that have too casual or familial of a relationship, this sends the wrong message to the other employees and makes them assume that favoritism is at play. An employee or manager relationship that is not balanced is truly adding to the list of reasons why a fellow employee would look for work elsewhere. As a part of this bank's employee retention strategy, all employees should be expected to evaluate their bosses at least once a year using anonymity. This evaluation would cover a variety of questions to gauge their manager's effectiveness. Free-form comments would also be encouraged, should the employee want to elaborate. After it's completed, the results would be sent to the branch manager's boss, and from there, an action plan for improvement on areas that scored lower would be created and evaluated again a year after that. Hold managers accountable for turnover. Bank A needs to evaluate, revise, and communicate the roles and responsibilities for executive, managers, and HR, or those responsible for the recruiting. Training should be provided for managers so that they can understand what's happening at this branch and discuss what leads to higher retention and greater job satisfaction overall. Holding managers responsible for keeping their employees is one big step to individuals on the hiring team evaluating if they are choosing to hire a lifelong employee or just an employee to fill a desk for a few months. Setting turnover goals for each manager and tracking quarterly would help make each branch visible and send messages to the management that corporate actually cares about retaining good employees. Incentivizing good hiring practices and everyone knowing the role that they play allows the bank to be promoting these managers whose behavior is consistent with the organization's values and philosophies. As you can see, it will take a combination of organizational development that includes solutions such as recruiting, selection and hiring process, training, performance evaluations, compensation, and recognition, as well as some internal reorganization, such as weeding out poor managers and holding management and leadership accountable. With these techniques, Bank A can start to restructure the working environment, encourage and engage the remaining long-term employees, and select new employees that will enhance and promote the new ways of doing business within the organization. The takeaway from all of this? It takes a combination of pieces and solutions to effectively solve the problem of employee turnover in a situation such as where Bob works at Bank A. The first or initial ideas to remedy the solution is rarely the sole answer and involves a further analysis beyond the surface of the problems at hand. A combination of the evident solutions with the addition of change management can prove to be a more intensive but more effective remedy in the long run.